Okay. Let's go back to the day that you got the original um, statements from Keefe D as to what really happened that night in Vegas with the proffer agreement. Um, why wasn't Vegas? Why weren't the Vegas authorities invited to that proffer session along with Keefe D and his attorney?
That's a great question, and I'm really surprised that that hasn't been answered before, or I'm sorry, asked before, asked and answered before. Um, I I'll tell you what happened was when we sat down with Keefe D and we were originally going to interview him about Biggie's murder, and he says, I don't know much about that. That was likely Suge. And he says, but what I can tell you is about the Tupac Shakur murder. And he goes on and explains what happened out in Vegas and all the things that led up to it and what happened afterwards. And because we knew there were still some loose ends with Zip, potentially with Terrence Brown, maybe even trying to figure out the things that he said about Puffy, if those things were true, we wanted to utilize Keefe D as an informant at that point. Like, okay, you're cooperating with us. Let's go out and see if we can use you to solicit information from these other co-conspirators. So we took him to New York. We tried to set something up with Zip. And so when we decided to use Keefe D as an informant, we wanted to keep that information, not that information, but that situation completely confidential. We didn't know if telling other agencies or getting other people involved in this very confidential effort could compromise what we were trying to accomplish. So we kept it in-house about our use of Keefe D. And then ultimately we did tell Las Vegas. We said we have somebody confessing to their role in your murder. They came out. They were apprised of everything that we had. And then they followed up and did their own interview with Keefe D, wherein he admitted again that he was involved. He was in the car. He handed the gun to Orlando. And then the shooting took place. So on multiple occasions within this law enforcement setting, when he's under a compelled agreement to tell the truth, he stays consistent. He says Orlando did the shooting, and this is when it's most important for Keefe D to tell the truth, because he's facing a 25-year sentence at the time. So he's got a reason to tell the truth in that situation, as opposed to when he goes out and begins to boast publicly and he starts to change some details of the story, because he got a lot of shit with his own family and with people in the neighborhood when they found out that Keefe D had ratted out his nephew and kind of threw Orlando under the bus. And so when he continues to tell his story, he changes it so that he doesn't have to continually throw Orlando under the bus.
Gotcha. Okay. Going, yeah, going back to when he did an interview with Vegas PD and kind of said the same thing that he said to you. Was he under the proffer agreement at that interview as well?
Yes, because it was an extension of the original agreement. So that proffer session kind of covered a bit of a blanket as insofar as his protected statement. So the LAPD interview with him, or the combined interview with Las Vegas, that all kind of fell under the auspices of the proffer agreement.
Okay. You kind of mentioned how Keefe D kind of got into a lot of hot water when he, implicated his nephew Orlando as the shooter. Um, I don't know if you've seen the interviews that Keefe does, but he always states that he saved his community by doing what he did. Do you happen to know what he means when he tries to say that he saved his community?
Yeah, I do. I mean, community is an awfully broad word, and it's an over-exaggeration of the truth. There were maybe a half a dozen other people that would have been dragged into his federal drug trafficking case. And since we didn't go ahead and prosecute Keefe on that, those people that were associated with him in that drug case simply weren't charged as a as a result of his cooperation. So what he's basically saying is that if I didn't cooperate, they were going to throw me in jail for all the dope, and they would have gotten all the other dope dealers that I was associated and dealing with also. So that's his community.